Firstly, thank you for over 100,000 subscribers! So what do people do for their 100k milestone? Oh no. So my channel often goes over my STEMA project, my collection of STEM-based creatures. But I only started to focus on drawing creature designs during the pandemic. And before STEMA, I had the Logic and Passion series, where I rushed to make a creature based off of science and art nearly every other day. So strap right in, because some of these are gonna make me wince. Let's start with the starters. Since the Logic and Passion series was supposed to cover both science and art, the starters need to not only progress in terms of science concepts, but also in artistic ones. For example, Mysicule, my starter based off of different molecular models of the same H2O molecule. Well, that line used to look like this. Honestly, it's the same concept with the spatial model, ball and stick, and then valence shells, but whoa. So what was the art concept? Well, it was supposed to be animation, due to how H2O in a spatial model looks like a Mickey Mouse head. First one was supposed to have blocky stop motion, second a rubber hose, and the last one was supposed to be a 3D model. None of these guys ended up being animated. But some of you might have realized how their types also changed like the different states of matter. This was a big mistake. So this is where I learned my biggest lesson. As much as I wanted to cram all these concepts into a design, I lost sight of the main goal. The goal to convey a concept in a character. Not all pieces of art are about looking pretty or trying to stuff as many inspirations in one place, because I remembered seeing a comment where they thought the different molecule models only applied when the water was liquid or solid. No, the models have nothing to do with the state of matter. And that's what I had to keep in mind when making future designs. If I want people to become familiar with the topic, I need to make my designs clear. Sure, it's fun to have a design with many inspirations, but it's not always about who can fit as many ideas in one place. These are designs. Just like designing a game, a building, or an app, the character needs to be designed to avoid confusion and unwanted conclusions. Art is a medium that can guide a viewer to a goal, a fact, a message, and the design should be sculpted so that others could reach that goal. This is why I'm also very against using pseudoscience as a creature concept in STEMA, because when every other concept is supposed to reference an actual science topic, that creature's gonna feel out of place, or even worse, give people the wrong idea. Wanting focus was also a factor in my decision to later narrow the focus to just STEM topics. Don't worry, I have a few words about the inclusion of the arts in STEM later in the video. But for now, let's finish cringing at these starters. My other starters are much different from the ones I have in STEMA. Smosk is a dino with a mask to represent the theatrical arts, but they also demonstrate evolution by going from a dino to a bird. And weirdly, I gave the last evolution two forms, a comedy and a tragedy mask, with the mask being different beak shapes depending on the type of attack they use. This was a reference to Darwin's study of finches, where different species evolved to wield differently shaped beaks depending on their diet. You know, I actually don't hate the mask and beak connection, but the art here, man, made as a polished pineapple. And what are those wings? But I saved the worst for last. Conet, a trumpet snail. The art concept was about different brass instruments. And the STEM concept, well, here it was about conic sections, a math topic. You'll come to see that this whole line was very forced, because the trumpet snail will grow up into a sine wave French horn. The heck did sine waves come from? Sound? Then what about the conic sections? But it keeps getting worse. I hope you understand why I'm cringing though. It's not just that the art is terrible, the concepts were also thrown together, which I had to practice and get better at doing over time, and okay, I'm stalling. Where's the math concept, you ask? The gold tuba makes a golden ratio spiral, which turns out snail shells aren't even true golden ratios. I much prefer the sunflower fan evolution I would make many months later to this hot, steamy pile of— And what's with the loops? You see, since this snail line was about musical instruments, I was also referencing the cochlea, which is the spiral structure of the inner ear. Again, so many concepts in a drawing, but cramming those concepts alone doesn't make a good design. Mind you, I still have some designs in STEMA that reference multiple concepts simultaneously, like ventiworms showing off carbon nanotubes that absorb light, but they're also giant tube worms who live near hydrothermal vents. Now there's that tube connection, and I wrapped the whole design with a shady undercover agent theme. By the way, what did ventiworm look like back then? Oh. Now, I actually even knew at the time that Konet's line sucked, but I wouldn't tackle on redrawing it immediately. In a few months, I repurposed them to be a non-starter 3-stage line, and I've come to realize how much more comfortable I felt when I was redesigning or even redrawing these designs. Because honestly, I don't completely hate these renders. For many of these creatures, I would revisit the concept and draw them again after a few months, with newfound knowledge not only about the mechanics of drawing, but also knowledge about the styles that I preferred. This particular line isn't in STEMA, as I mainly disagree with the forced progression of the math concepts, but separately, who knows, maybe I'll revisit some of these concepts again. But wait, if my Pyro starter turned into a regular 3-stager, who did I have for the starter? So this is what Astro used to look like, as they hop between different species of bug, from a ladybug, firefly, to a sun beetle, to represent stages of the star cycle. Honestly, I wasn't a fan of how erratic the jumps were, plus Astro here barely looked like a nebula. That's why my revisit turned them into funny ambiguous aliens in STEMA. I ended up going with completely different concepts for my Pyro and Dendro starters, which I explained in a past video. So designs are meant to be iterated. If the design caused a grievous misunderstanding, change it. If you didn't like how it looked, change it. In the middle of 2021, I did a hard reset. New template, new signature. I called the project STEMA Logic and STEMA Passion. It later became just STEMA. I had a stronger grasp on what proportions I personally prefer. And honestly, a lot of the art from this time, I'm okay with. That's why many of the designs on this channel are still from that quote-unquote second generation of my designs. So let's start rolling the comparisons, starting from designs that barely changed to those that changed a lot. Sponge, the baby is perfect, but I did change it from an evolution into a form change. Tuna Rat, ugh, my shading game was so weak back in the day. Tripper, this was actually the only STEMA that existed even before the Logic and Passion series, as they were a one-off design when I first heard about the hallucigenia. What a fossil. Moel, it had a Bohr atom model on it. It's cringe and overused in pop media. Phasorm, why are their eyes uneven? Bruh, it wasn't like that when I redrew them at the time. But if I were to guess why, I probably didn't get enough sleep. Even when I felt more comfortable with my art, there were some days I would try to crank out a design that I just knew didn't match up with my standards. But after a proper night's rest, I could take a better stab at it. My sleep schedule is terrible, but dang, a well-rested mind is just built different, you know? And a good sleep can do wonders to your mental and physical health. Position. Why? Oh, why did I have so many blank spaces on my old designs? They're all flightless birds, with the baby having the most unnatural stop sign on their eggshell. I much prefer the hummingbirds and swifts I went with later on. But if you think that was bad, can you guess what Rampling's line used to look like? You know, this Scorpio line based off of Simple Machines? The heck is that first design? That is literally just a topographical map with eyes, and it turns into a shark? And Minter. Oh no. So I thought this was so bad that I didn't even show it when I shared a few other old designs in last year's video. Minter used to be a 3-stage line, and gosh darn they really shouldn't be. But sure, here's their little peppermint candy, and whoa, would you look at that, they grew arms, a humanoid elf thing. I don't know, man. But that's not where the revisions end. Some STEMAs went through several redesigns. For example, here's Holorer. How the heck does any of this drawing work in a 3D space? I just had a skill issue. I later gave them beams for legs, but that didn't make much sense. So they adopted this genie-like body plan, and finally just no base at all, coming straight from the ground. My video on Pika clones go over how Chippu changed, and yet I'm still considering on changing Chippu a little. I just don't want their ears to be transparent. So I drew this just before this video. In fact, since I started to make YouTube videos in 2022, some designs would change right before I made a video on them. Like, here's another change for this video. I actually want to change the name of my imaginary number stemma, because they're not technically a complex number. That's imaginary plus real numbers. No, they're just imaginary. So I now want to call them imequines. You heard it here first. But really, many of the designs I've shown don't go back all the way to logic and passion. But I will still find some designs in need of a redraw before the YouTube video, effectively being my third generation of designs. Like the Snapeel line, basically the same design, but now that I had a stronger grasp on how to draw, I was able to touch up on the proportions before the video. Oh, and Kadar changed a lot. I was never really happy with the old design, so I finally made their ears the more recognizable round dish. The old Kadar was wide, like other antenna shapes, but they just didn't help make the concept clear. Even Dracoran was redrawn right before the video. Actually, dang, this line also existed way back in Logic and Passion. Do you want to see them? You really don't. Ugh. They were a flatworm to fold up into a cube. But no, Drachedron had to be multiple cubes so that they could fold up into a tesseract. Why are they so rubbery? But yeah, even when I redrew them later, I felt like the final stage really needed another go at it before I was satisfied enough to show it in a video. So that's the redraw. Finally, the latest pair of videos shows off Behavian, who used to look just simpler. I wanted to make them more complex, so that they could stand on their own as a single stager. Mind you, some of the designs I show off here are completely new, like Slossum and the whole Stemodel family, and I even have more in store. I just need to save some of them for the game I'm slowly making. I sometimes get asked if I have a STEMA design based off of the arts. And while the short answer is not really, the long answer is, well, isn't every design employing the techniques of art? The inclusion of art in STEM was only really being pushed after I graduated high school. And while in a simple glance, they seem unconnected, art not only helps but often proves to be necessary in science. The last steps of the scientific method is to apply and communicate your findings. If science is applied in engineering to yield technology, the communication is done through art, whether it's spoken art, written art, or visual art. Often that art is ignored, thought to be ancillary and straight up reporting numbers, but that's what makes STEM seem unapproachable, gatekeeping it behind terminology. There are times where it feels like some academics take pride in confusing others to pump artificial value into buzzwords, but that behavior shouldn't be encouraged monetarily. That behavior is actively detrimental to society, and now the confusion has made the average person mad, with even researchers getting caught in the fray. They're not immune. Effective communication is an art, using various media to effectively relay a point across to students, other educators, neighbors, and even officials. If you think art is just about pretty drawings from a cobbled collection of references, that's frankly a very shallow and shamefully incorrect view of a whole facet of being a social organism. There's more to you than your parts, and there's more to you than your history. If you can't figure that out, sounds like a skill issue. But don't worry, I had that skill issue too. I'm a chem major with a minor in CS, And if I learned anything from chemistry, it's that many things are connected. Today I told you how visual designs can go through a similar process to what engineering designs go through: testing and iterating. Through the Cringe, I was able to experiment and find my own preferences, style, and application of concepts to a point where I'm at least comfortable in my works and my ability to draw more in the future. When I started to draw during the pandemic, I told myself that I was no artist. But under that self-denigration, I still promised myself to genuinely try for my own sake. My visual journey is not over by a long shot, but I was able to earn calling myself Nordist. So with that, thank you again to over 100,000 of you for following and supporting my works. And a special thank you to my supporters on Patreon. If you like this video, follow along. There'll be a lot more to come. Not all my videos would cover STEMA, but a lot of exciting videos either way. Alright, have a better tomorrow.